Despite the fact that I don't even have a single Perma-Vision card tongue twister ticket, took me 5 times to say that right, I decided to make a video that tells you which vision card you should select. Personally, I will never use this list, not because I don't plan to get the ticket, but because I plan to hoard them all until the game ends just like every other type of ticket I own. Now I'm sure you're all wondering where you even get this ticket. At least, I'm pretty sure I'll get a comment asking where you get one if I don't clarify this detail. By awakening one premium Neo Vision unit to EX +1, you will get the ticket as a consolation prize for selling off your second kidney. You can tell which units are premium by whether or not they cost you an arm or a leg. Sometimes both. And don't forget the kidney. First off, let's explain what makes a good vision card. You can easily distinguish these, as they will generally have more value than a used candy wrapper. Vision cards consist of 2 important features, passive buffs and stats. While no one looks at stats because numbers are boring and letters for some reason are not, they still play an important role nonetheless. It is for this reason that cards like Azure Successor, despite having useful passives, will ultimately be disregarded because of its relatively low stats. Even so, people will likely ignore those in favor of passive buffs because they're short-sighted, so let's keep going. Each third slot of a vision card has a passive that usually applies to a unit from the same series as the unit you got the vision card from. As a result, more often than not, a unit would likely prefer carrying their own vision card, as opposed to picking up someone else's. Of course, there are some pronounced exceptions, but you have to realize I don't really care. So let's go over each of them. Instead of focusing on any one particular measure, I'll be valuing vision cards that display a wider spread of application. Mad Dash simply boosts attack with a greatsword. While it does a good job at it, it's not too difficult to cap any given stat, and you're better off looking for another vision card that brings more to the table. In Order to Change the World has passives that boost your unit's HP and defense. However, the card itself is attack-oriented, so ultimately as a vision card it winds up becoming very confused. Planet's Whisper boosts magic and spear with a rod, but its stats are just way too low to justify this ticket. Guiding the Youth is like Mad Dash but with katana, and while you might think, ooh, Sephiroth, he doesn't actually need the help anyways. Virtual Training has come a long way. With no limits, it's an excellent pick to boost a unit's spirit by incredible amounts. I only recommend choosing it if they're holding a single weapon though. The status helmet resistance is just icing on the cake. Azure Successor has nice passives, boosting attack and magic, alongside limit burst damage so long as the unit's female, but the stats themselves are incredibly low, especially compared to many other vision cards. The limit burst damage buff shifts it to a higher color tier, but it's still outclassed. Judge Magister is great for physical tanks. However, most physical tanks prefer their own vision card anyways. If you have any one physical tank, you'll likely get their vision card eventually. Battle of the Black Knights can boost attack, which isn't really special, especially given 2 out of 4 of these weapons are rarely paired up. It does have a guts buff, but that's only applicable to units from Final Fantasy II. Madam and the Giant Bird, Birdo, is attack with a fist. The upcoming Neo Vision Tifa wouldn't mind this, but again, attack isn't too hard to build. If it weren't for this one unit, this vision card would be red like all the other ones. The Heartless Sage boosts magic with a rod. However, magic isn't too hard to stack. Too Cool for the Summer is great for magic tanks, but I bet you can sense a similar reasoning to physical tanks. Christos Revelation boosts fire, water, wind, and earth resistance by 20%, and then boosts attack with a sword or katana. Unfortunately, the elemental resistance doesn't make up for the relatively low attack, and I can't imagine that you'd look for this specific vision card on numerous occasions. A Day in the Life of Isolus boosts attack and magic with a gun. Unfortunately, once again, we see that the stats are too low. Search for the Esper boosts your unit's magic if they're holding a sword. This has the same lookout as the one of the rod, and while the last passive is good, come on, only one unit will actually use it. And if you have that unit, you'll have this vision card. Separation and Restoration boost attack with a throwing weapon. The Heir to Purple Lightning boosts attack and magic with clothes. If your unit's male, it'll give them a double insect killer, but ultimately with the low stats, it's kind of a hard sell. Thanks for Everything boosts attack or magic with a greatsword or a bow respectively. While it's nice as a combination, so few units need both at the same time. Furthermore, in any one regard, it faces stiff competition, which is why it doesn't receive too much glory. Festive Preparations, Team Laswell boosts HP, and equipment attack on dual wielding. Dual wielding equipment has a cap at 200%, which is not especially hard to reach. Festive Preparations, Team Sages boosts magic with a rod and a robe. I don't quite know why you wouldn't just grab Sylphs if you want magic. While the elemental resistance is nice, it's hard to argue that it's worth this ticket, unless you just so happen to be struggling with a battle that needs that 30% elemental resistance. Festive Preparations, Team Axstar increases attack with a katana. It's lower than Axstar's original vision card, but that's because it also boosts equipment attack when single-wielding. Unfortunately, Sephiroth isn't from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. The Savior's Descent boosts attack and magic so long as their unit's holding a shield. This hasn't really come into play since its introduction, so it unfortunately remains low tier for a novel idea. Friends from today is Attack with a Spear. 500 Years of Grief is literally for snow. The requirements are just so alienating that I can't put it on the same level as Gadron's vision card. Sildra, come up and say hello, may have a low stat boost to justify its facile requirement, but it's really the evoke damage boost that stands out. This is most notable as it's restricted to female units, which is a wider pool than, say, units from Final Fantasy V. For whatever reason, most evoke units tend to be female, and while they all have their own vision card anyways, there is one candidate that stands out in the future. Neo Vision Yuna is likely another premium unit, meaning you have to sell your other friend's soul to get her vision card if it's locked behind EX plus 3 again. Unfortunately, Yuna also prefers spirit over magic, so no matter how hard you try to beat the system, you'll never actually win. Still, with a fairly decent set, this vision card isn't a bad pick so long as they release a unit that wouldn't mind using it. Egg Painting increases HP, and Equipment Spear when dual-wielding. There aren't too many magic tanks that prefer dual-wielding over a shield, and units that want Spear would rather have more Spirit. The Equipment Spear cap is also 200% for dual-wielding, so as more of these equipment are released, it'll gradually become easier to cap that stat. Face My Full Power is a weaker version of So's vision card, as a result of an automatic 15% water damage buff for Final Fantasy Brave Exvius units. As of this video's release, 15% isn't exactly rare. The Cure for Insomnia boosts attack with a sword. For what it's worth, the attack stat is high, but there are bound to be higher values later on. It also boosts jump damage, but only for units from Final Fantasy 15. If you have said units, you won't need to use this ticket on this vision card anyways. A King's Dominion stands out most for its evasion passive. Of course, this is only important if you happen to lack any alternatives, and using a vision card for this is a relatively expensive investment. Still, depending on the battle at hand, it might be a good investment. Duty as the Oracle straight up boosts magic and Esper magic for female units. Whether or not this is a better choice than the Sildra vision card depends on the unit in question, but overall it's pretty solid. Onward to the Disc is the same as Insomnia, but with different elemental resistance. 50% light can be better than the 25% split, but really, that depends on the battle. Ultimately, it nevertheless has the same snags as the aforementioned card. Swords of Fury increases attack with a short sword. A family reunited boosts magic with a fist. The one I've loved suffers for being stuck with a whip requirement, but the fact that the third passive is available to any unit from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius opens up far more possibilities than Swords of Fury, which also has a limit burst damage boost. The attack stat is also high, which makes that whip requirement looks like it takes up too much space. Even heroes need a break boost attack with a greatsword. It's the first card, but better. Still, attack remains attack. Ragnarok boosts defense when equipped with a fist, and boosts it further so long as the unit's holding a single weapon. It's not quite as restrictive, and it's a decent place to boost defense, but defense isn't really too hard to cap. A crimson-colored light indiscriminately boosts magic, provides a boost to your unit's limit burst gauge fill rate, and boosts the limit burst damage for units from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. To top it off, it has a high magic stat, and while that can be overshadowed in the future, it just so happens to make this card one of the best as of this video's release. Dramatic Costume Change has the highest attack stat of all vision cards, and while its passives just boost HP and attack, there's no restriction to any effect. It's surprising how substantial a difference of 5 makes. A World United provides a great deal of attack with a sword or greatsword, a decent amount of magic with a rod, and a limit burst damage buff for units from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. It's ultimately rather comprehensive, netting it a high placement in this video. Finally, Memories Below the Surface boosts MP, and elemental resistance for units from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. While it initially looks lackluster, the Spirit stat combined with the MP passive makes it a decent choice for Setcher Descendant Aerith, especially as it lets her equip a shield. And then the remaining vision cards have such niche effects that they're not worth going over, especially when you can obtain most of them randomly from getting any Neo Vision unit in the first place. So with that, what's the best vision card? For now, I think it's a crimson-colored light. High magic stat, more magic, boost the limit burst gauge fill rate, and boost the limit burst damage for units from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. Other than that, Dramatic Costume Change is also a good pick, due to its lack of restrictions and high attack stat. If you want attack and a limit burst damage buff, you can also go for a World United, though you have to keep in mind that it's still restricted to units from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. Of course, just like anything else, vision cards can get power crap, so ultimately the best choice is to hold off on making a decision, as you sit there, telling yourself, maybe, just maybe, something better might come along. And then ultimately you'll never end up using this ticket, and will continue to complain that they should have just made the premium unit vision cards available at EX+1. Ugh. How could they have the audacity to try and make you think? Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below if you use this ticket now, and which card you traded in for. Regardless, I personally believe that Rizer's vision card remains number 1, but since I already have it maxed out, there's no need for me to get further copies.